Good evening. Welcome to the December 12th meeting of the Public Service Commission. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Chairman Kostick is excused. Kennedy's here. Les Smitsky.
Present, sir.
Linda Stanko's excused. Ray Biddle.
Here.
Lenny Puderis.
Present.
And Treasurer Nadeau.
We're here.
Okay, everybody has the agenda. Is there any issue with the agenda as presented? Any deletions or additions that anybody wants to recommend?
No, sir.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll support. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda's approved. Okay, we have the minutes from the October meeting. Everybody's had a chance to review them. I was not present at that meeting. Are there any comments on the minutes of the October meeting, October 10th? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the October 10th meeting.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Okay, we have the bills and vouchers. Everybody's had a chance to review them. Are there any comments or questions on them? I didn't have any. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Support.
Motion to approve and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Vouchers are approved. We have the statements of revenue and expenditures. Derek, would you explain the A and the B on those? I was a little confused about that, where it was transferred in from 5990. Was that from our bond money coming in?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, got it. Okay, are there any other questions about the statements of revenue and expenditures?
No, sir.
Will be filed. We then have the treasurer's report. Anybody have any questions on the treasurer's report? I'll entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll make a motion, we approve the treasurer's report.
Aye, second.
Moved and supported. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Treasury report is approved. No public comment at this point. Ryan, you're up. You got here just in time.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, hey, Ryan.
The ILP screws were removed this week at the plant. New ones are on site there. And the bypass pumping is all set up at the plant too. And that will go on until mid-February. So that's necessary for the flow throughout the plant. So that's all on schedule. With the final clarifier, they're back filling right now, a lot of the holes and everything. But the concrete work is mostly finished right now, so that's good, with the winter here. And that we were having an issue with the primary and secondary sludge pumps. We needed these bleeder valves. We're just waiting on a quote from a contractor so we can install those. And the issue with those is we have to just manually operate those pumps because they get air binding in the pump. So once we have these bleeder valves, then the secondary pumps will operate automatically, which is the way they're supposed to operate, like every hour. So, but we're just manually operating them in the meantime. That's about all I have at the plant. We have an HVAC meeting this Friday at 9 a.m. We're just moving along with that, just kind of formalizing a lot of the work, the suppliers of everything and all that. So that's all I got.
We're trying to utilize the grant funding that we received from the federal government. If you recall, we got about $3.5 million worth of grant funding. So the intent is to use those dollars to fund that project. It's about $1 million HVAC system. So it involves a fair amount of additional work that's necessary. Ryan had mentioned finalizing the contractors and the suppliers. Because it is federal money, there's Davis-Bacon that applies, there's Buy American provisions that apply, there's environmental reviews that have to take place, and potentially disadvantaged business contracting that we have to do. So Raines is in the process of navigating a lot of those federal requirements that come with that federal money. So that has taken a little bit longer than anticipated, but we still are within the schedule that we had presented to you previously, which was spring. The main restricting factor is the supply, timelines of the material, not necessarily these standards or additional requirements that are being presented to us. So I think maybe just expand on that a little bit. That's kind of what we have going on. And I believe the meeting on Friday is to address some of those items, and then also, have a follow-up on the scheduling of the materials and equipment. So.
But no other issues at the plant, so anybody have any concerns?
No? Anybody? Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Phil.
Did you have any questions?
I just one quick question. The primary that's up and running and doesn't have any
that's up
issues?
and running.
Okay.
Number one, yep. Yeah, everything in that room is great now.
Okay.
All good.
So all the primaries are redone now?
Yep.
Okay.
All new.
So within the past 24 months?
Yeah.
Yes.
The bar screen's working good?
Yup, it has been working for almost a year now with no flaws with that new rag chute where it only has one elbow.
Right.
That was the trick. So now it's working like it always should have been, but it's okay. So yeah, it's great.
Thank you, Ryan.
Alrighty.
Good,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, we have 3 action items. The first one is the authorization for Wayne County to perform supplemental snow removal on the island. I'll read the proposal. The Grosse Ile Department of Public Services Commission hereby recommends to the Grosse Ile Township Board the execution of an agreement with Wayne County for priority maintenance service to local roads. This recommendation, that's winter maintenance service. This recommendation is for the 2023-2024 winter season and is at a cost of $19,110.16. So everybody knows the history on this. Previous costs have been up over $30,000. It came down last year, was $22,000, and then, or last year was $19,958. We have budgeted $22,000, and now they've come in at $19,110.16. Anybody have any comments on this? Les?
No comment.
I mean, I really, I don't know. I go both ways on this. Somehow I feel it's a bit of a cash cow for Wayne County. They came out here, a couple weeks ago, and we had snow flurries, and they spread salt all over the roads. I didn't see that was necessary, but it was done. And then other times when we have had significant snowfalls, they've sort of been around on time. But Derek, what are your thoughts on this?
Just like you're saying, Phil, you know, I live right up on Parkway at the corner there. And if we get a heavy snowstorm, you don't see them out here for 2 or 3 days. They're too busy on I-75 or the state roads like 4th Street. When they finally get over to Grosse Ile, the DPW has already been out here plowing all over the place, and we already hired a contractor. So you can probably get my feelings of this. I have never voted for it ever since it came up 30 years ago.
So just one item worth noting. You know, the phrase of priority winter maintenance is maybe a misnomer. It might not be the best title for this. Priority would indicate that we're put ahead of others or other roads, other communities. That's not what this necessarily is. What this does is it expands winter snow removal activities onto some of our secondary roads that wouldn't normally have service if it wasn't for this provision. So the main roads, the east, the West River roads, the Meridian, parkways, those all receive winter maintenance activities from the county, but under a traditional arrangement without this priority service, your roads that are listed on this sheet would not receive that service. Not too dissimilar than our neighborhood roads that don't receive service unless we go in as the township under an emergency condition and plow those streets with a contractor. So if this isn't accepted, you know, those roads, Bellevue, Church, Ferry Grays, Horse Mill, Lyons, Manchester, Meridian, Bridge to Park Lane portion of it, Park Lane, various Park Lane sections, and South Point would not get that service that.
Wouldn't get touched at all.
Correct.
Good touch by the county.
Yep. So
Okay.
just wanted to clarify that. It's not.
It's not priority, it's
right.
something or nothing.
Right, exactly. We don't pay for them to get here sooner. We pay them to do these roads that wouldn't normally get
Come
done.
up at all,
Yep.
to come at all.
Right.
Okay. Well, we have the proposal in front of us. It is less than previous years. Not sure why.
The amount is based upon the previous year's cost to provide that service for our community. So the more snow you have in a given year, the more you pay in the next year.
So if we had a lot of snow this year, next year it'd be higher,
Right.
and then if that year we didn't have any, then the following year would be lower. So it's a lagging number.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
got it.
So maybe the time to not do it is after a year that you experience a lot of snowfall.
And if we get heavy snow this year, 19 grand's a deal.
Yeah, last year we didn't have a lot.
We didn't have a lot. I think we only plowed once or twice last year.
Correct. Well, we have the proposal.
One other item worth noting, the township board did already pass this because the winter season was already upon us. We didn't want to wait until the next meeting, so the board did pass this, but it was contingent upon
Okay,
DPS's recommendation,
Okay.
so.
okay.
Well, with that said,
I'll make a motion to
and I'll gladly
To
second.
accept it.
And I'll gladly second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm opposed to this. Been opposed to it for over 30 years.
Duly noted. Next on the agenda is the lease agreement recommendation for the DPW building
Building.
on the airport.
on the airport property. And rather than read through the whole thing, I guess this was something that was never executed, correct?
Correct, yes.
And so we're backdating it to 1998?
Correct, yep.
And is there any money changing hands on this, or is it just all internal stuff?
All internal stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is a legal requirement prompted by the FAA, I suppose.
How'd the FAA get into all this stuff? They just do
They own the
some,
property still.
Well, not technically. The airport takes a certain amount of money from the FAA to do projects like this taxiway out
Right.
here. $5 million was the most recent allocation. When you take that money, you obligate yourselves to certain conditions. One being they're using the airport property for certain purposes, mainly aviation. Also, to I think the vice chairman's point, when the airport received this property from the federal government, it obligated itself to certain conditions in the deed to use the property for certain purposes.
I understand
So,
that, yes.
Between those two, the money we continually take and the conditions for which we took this property, we fall under the FAA's provisions and regulations on how we utilize our property.
but someone had to do an audit, is my point.
Yes,
Derek.
so the FAA comes along every so often, 3 to 5 years, does a review of the property to see what the usage is and the agreements that are in place that dictate that usage. So they had an audit, I want to say, 6-7 years ago, and this was flagged. So it's been sitting there since that audit. There has been recent pressure from the FAA to address this as well as other properties that the township's going to have to deal with through similar arrangements. But this is kind of one that had already been worked on some years ago with the previous airport manager and the previous DPS director. And now we're just getting around to, finalizing this with this renewed pressure that the FAA has placed on the airport and the township.
I was gonna say, is this building part of the same problem?
That's one of the other ones. So this facility, the DPS facility, both fall under the same kind of issue. And the township's gonna have to work on a similar arrangement for this building here. So,
Have we floated any of this lease agreement past the FAA for their review or approval?
yes,
And
yes, it
they-
has.
And they have no issues with it?
They have no issues with the format nor the arrangement of the credit. They have a little bit more leniency when it comes to government relationships.
Right.
So, yeah, they have no issue with this design. And just to be clear, this would be a recommendation from you, not an approval, so it would then go to the board, and that conversation would take place at the board level. The same conversation would take place at the board level.
Any other comments?
Yeah, Derek, there's one thing that you didn't say, that the airport supplied the property and we paid for the building, the whole building, even the part that the airport is in.
Correct, yes.
Right.
And that's been factored into the rental
Yeah, you
amount.
see that in that agreement there. Okay.
Further comment? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion to
And I'll support it. Motion and
To
support.
approve and support. Okay, this will be to recommend that the Grosse Ile Township Board approve the lease agreement between the Grosse Ile Municipal Airport and the Grosse Ile Department of Public Services. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our last proposal is for bid request authorization for Ferry Road repave and a contract extension to Chip Seal Meridian north of Bridge and Bellevue west. So this was planned in our road improvement program and wasn't accomplished. The Ferry Road was left off because it was a detour for Meridian while it was under construction. And we just ran out of time on the chip sealing on that.
I think we were able to accomplish the total chip sealing schedule that we had proposed. These are two new roads. And I apologize, on the action item, it's got the wrong title. The right title's on the agenda, but the action item sheet has the wrong title. Ferry Road had always been an intended project. Rains is gonna have to take a look at that road though, because it is in pretty poor shape. I spoke with Ohio earlier this week, and he had mentioned that they're actually going to probably consider pulverizing that road and then using that pulverized material as base and then paving potentially new over the top. So they've got to take a look at that and see exactly the best scope of work for that stretch, but that'll be part of the bidding process to develop the spec. So the chip sealing stretches are, I had a conversation with the chairman. He would like to entertain those two areas to be chip sealed, and they do appear to be good, stretches to perform that activity on. They kind of meet that criteria that we're looking for. Not too far gone, and they do have a fair amount of crack sealing on them, but the coating of the chip seal would prolong the life of those stretches of road. The proposal is to extend the contract with the current vendor at the current price. So I think that would be the preferred method if we're able to achieve that. They are one of the only, if the only, contractor in the area, number one. And number two, with the way inflation is, if we can lock them in at the previous year's price, I think that would be very attractive as far as the unit pricing for those stretches. So that would be the direction given to the engineer to try to pursue that.
And we're talking about Bellevue to West River Road.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, west of Meridian, the section that wasn't done this last time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Derek, do you know when the construction on the Bellevue project is going to take place?
I don't. I know through the presentations, the conversation was potentially 18 to 24 months from the approval, but I don't know that.
Does that have an impact on chip sealing Bellevue?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. I wouldn't think so. I know that the recreation director had voiced his concerns about the construction of that path during the summer season. He would like to see the construction done in the fall and potentially in and towards the wintertime. So it's less disruptive for the facility there. Chip sealing, normally we get ours done in the spring. We did have some work in the fall this year, but that was because they couldn't finish up the original scope, and they did finish the original scope. We added work on, so that's why they came back in the fall. So I wouldn't expect that those scopes of work or those projects would, be done at the same time anyways.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I have a question, Derek, while we're on the subject of chip sealing. The gentleman that put that down, did you talk to him about Dallas?
Yes, we did. Following the DPS meeting, the supervisor and I, the last DPS meeting, the supervisor and I walked that road with the residents that were in attendance at our last meeting, and we are going to do something. It's just we ran out of time, so the spring is going to have to be the time that we present whatever solution that is. It might need to be stripped. There were sections that kind of had come up. There were bare spots, so the complaints that the residents had in that area were legitimate, and we had talked to the contractor about reviewing in the spring, and he had said that wouldn't be a problem. He would come back and address it, when the weather improves
Yeah, I
in
think it was
2024.
too late in the year
Right.
when they did it.
Yep. So yeah, that's being handled and it's being addressed.
Okay, good.
Any further comment? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion?
Support?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded, so this is for the Grosse Ile Department of Public Service Commission hereby directs Grosse Ile Township engineers to develop bid specifications and commence bidding the resurfacing of Ferry Road. In addition, the DPS Commission requests Grosse Ile Township engineers discuss with the 2023 chip seal low bidder, which was highway maintenance, a contract extension to perform chip sealing activities on Meridian Road north of Bridge and Bellevue west of Meridian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to the manager's report. Derek?
Just a couple items for this evening. There's a water loss report that's included in your packet. I didn't recall from the conversation at the last meeting whether this was something that you guys wanted to see monthly, but the parts that I do recall was that it's not overly burdensome for us to do this. It doesn't take long at all to do it, so I think if you're not opposed, I can just continue to do this for you so that you can keep track of kind of where we're at. 19.32% is our running average since January of 2021 on this month's chart. Any questions about that? If not, the second item is just our project status report. Ryan had already gone over a lot of the different items that are in our wastewater treatment plant project list. We are preparing bidding documents for the next round of cleaning and televising. The current contractor, the contractor we've used the past 5 years, is just doing some real minor cleanup on some various areas and has been working on that since the beginning of the fall. But restarting that process requires restarting of the bidding process, and they're in the process of putting that together right now, the bidding documentation. We are in the process of developing with a collaborative contract the scope of work for the repair of the items that were found during that TVing and cleaning of the system. I believe we are going to try to utilize a portion of that $3.5 million for some of this work potentially. So the HVAC system is going to be about $1 million of that. The balance of that $3.5 million is going to probably, we're looking at using that for rehab and then also some work in the RBC rooms over at the wastewater treatment plant. The initial idea was to utilize portions of those funds to offset the expense of the work going on at the plant currently. What issue arose with that was because that project was bid and awarded before those dollars came in, a lot of the contracting that was done didn't meet the requirements that money has on it. So normally when you have knowledge that federal funding is going to be part of a project, you'll bid that project with Davis-Bacon, prevailing wage, by American provisions. And because that project was all bid and awarded before that funding came to us, none of that work would necessarily comply with those federal dollar requirements. So, but as you are all aware from the presentation that was provided some months ago here with our asset management plan for the sanitary sewer system, we have a large capital expense associated with the entire system that goes on for the next 25 years according to that plan. The funds that are available, so long as they are used on the sanitary sewer system, those are all eligible expenses. So as we move along, we'll be looking for projects and work that can be bid and awarded under those federal requirements to utilize and take advantage of that $3.5 million amount. So I think part of the work we're looking at using, or part of the money we're looking at using for this portion, which offsets the overall expense of the system, right, to the tune of $3.5 million. I guess my point is it doesn't really matter where you spend it. If it offsets costs that would have had to be incurred and revenue that hadn't been used from other areas, it's still, obviously valuable to us. So it's either spent here, it's still part of the system. So, anyways, we're looking at doing a collaborative project potentially for that, but also we have to keep in mind that funding source. HVAC unit at the lab and at the wastewater treatment plant, as Ryan mentioned, we've got a kickoff meeting this Friday, and we're working on the federal requirements for the funding. The Final clarifier for the basis of design. The final clarifier has been poured. They're doing the piping connections to that. The sludge chamber sludge chamber is under construction. And the contractor is currently backfilling the final clarifier structure, as Ryan had mentioned earlier. Nothing really new on the asset management prep for the sanitary sewer and wastewater treatment plant. Clarifier 1 is complete. The water system asset management plan is currently in progress. I would say they're probably about 30% done with the water asset management plan. The water reliability study, that is in progress as well. One of the things we're waiting on is the water main under the Meridian Road Bridge at the canal there, for that to be repaired, because a portion of the reliability study is going to be dependent upon flow characteristics that provides. So we've got to get that repaired before we really can finalize that reliability study. We're currently, just to update you on that, we're currently in litigation with the contractor. The township's intent is to go ahead and proceed with that repair regardless of the litigation outcome. We've been assured by our attorney that if we do conduct the repair, it doesn't adversely affect our case. So Rains has been working with a couple of different vendors that do that type of work, and we do have a quote to do that repair, which I think we'll probably move forward with here fairly shortly. The dollar figure is in about the $200,000 range is what we're looking at, and we do have that money available. Hopefully it'll be recouped through that suit, but because of the functionality of the system being reliant upon that section of water main, the reliability of the system is dependent upon that. We want to try to get it done as quickly as possible rather than wait for a long, prolonged, litigation that could last or could go, longer than what we would feel comfortable that main being out of service for. So that's where we're at with that water main, just to update you.
Is that something that you could think is gonna get done next month type of thing, Derek? or
Yes.
what?
Yeah. If the contractor has availability, which they've indicated they have availability, we want to take advantage of that and get the work done. So Rains is working with them currently. That more or less is probably going to be authorized under an emergency project authorization, and then move forward and just get the work done. So
So it's plugged right now. It's not, that water line is plugged right now?
correct. So Grosio Township has two water feeds that come into the island, one at the north end, one at the south end. The connection to those two feeds, the primary connection between those two feeds is at that point. So right now we have two isolated systems. There is a loop around the perimeter of the island, but it's not sized at 16 inches like it is there.
Okay.
So if one feed goes down, we can backfeed through that loop, but it doesn't provide the type of pressures that we would want that 16-inch provides. So that is the connection point.
Okay.
So we want to try to get that up and running as quickly as we can to make sure that system, if one of the feeds coming onto the island goes down, we can backfeed through that 16-inch, go in that direction. So, last, you got anything to add on that one? It's a thumbs up. Okay. So that's one of the reasons we want to try to get it up and running as quickly as possible. Paving projects were pretty much done for the construction season. Park Lane has been completed. I think that they're finalizing the shoulders, but I think most of that's been done. They have some striping I think they still need to do there. We have probably about $100,000 in concrete contract costs left from this construction season that will flow into the next construction season. Of the GV contract, I think we had budgeted and we had allocated about $1 million, so about 90% of that work got done. So the rest will just wait till the spring. And that, I believe, concludes my report on the projects, unless there's questions.
Derek, lead water lines, where are we at with that? We still had, last time I heard, which was a couple months ago, we still had some of those lead service lines in some homes here.
Uh-huh. So we are in compliance with what the state is requiring as far as the inventory and the replacement guidelines. So we have to inventory within a certain period of time. We have to replace within a certain period of time. So off the top of my head, inventories have to be done, I believe, by 2025 and certified. And then I believe we have to replace 5% over a period of time to get them all replaced. So right now we're in the inventory stage, and then we will be in the replacement stage once that inventory is certified by the state and our plan of replacement has been authorized. We do, as we come across lead service lines, replace them in compliance with the regulations, which is all the way from the main into the house, a full replacement. But we are in compliance and we are working within the guidelines of the state. We also have a monitoring program that we are required to partake in, where we take samples to ensure that, if there are any high-risk homes that could potentially have lead contamination in them, that we're testing them. So we do that as the state requires us to. So there's ongoing testing, and then there's also planning and replacement. So it's a whole process, a package that, not only the state requires us to do, but, obviously we want to do to make sure our residents are safe.
Oh, absolutely. It's a major health issue
Right.
that could get out of hand. Do we know how many homes on the island have lead service lines?
And I would defer that question to John, but I want to say he's used the number 50.
Last count was 73.
So in that range, 50, 70, somewhere in there. And we have 4,000 homes in the community.
Right.
So we as a community have far less than other communities do as a percentage of our housing stock. So we're in a much better position, from that cost standpoint, and also, exposure standpoint than a lot of other communities are.
What is the assessment less, and maybe you can recall from your past experience, but what would it cost to replace all those 70-plus lead service lines? Do you know?
All depends on what the contractor is charging, his hourly fee, and
So we've never put a dollar figure on that?
a couple of them they changed. I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's about $6,000.
Yeah, it depends upon the method of replacement. So if it's an open cut, if they can connect and pull, but it ranges anywhere from 3 to 7. So with the average house being between $4,000 and $5,000 to do that. Depends upon the run to the road, those type of things.
It just seems like it's a liability that we're just kicking down the road, is my whole point, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, we replace them as we come across them, but, we are in compliance with what the state requires. They understand that, this is a cost to the communities. So they were reasonable, I think, in their regulations about when we replace them. But I know we budget annually monies to replace them, and we're doing 3 or 4 a year. So it's not that we're completely ignoring it, but, we are in compliance. So that's what I got to offer to you.
Yeah. That's if you have a lot of faith in the state guidelines.
Well, we just received our lead copper results back, I think, a couple of weeks ago, because my house is one of them that's tested, and John gave me the paperwork on it. So they got all the results back a few weeks ago.
Yeah. In the state, actually, the state guidelines are actually more strict than the federal guidelines. The federal guidelines are changing currently, and they're looking at actually modifying them. The tolerances that the state has are actually less than what the EPA has. So, I think Flint scared a lot of people, and they're very serious, the state is, about lead service lines. So although the regulations are fairly reasonable in that they took into consideration the phasing in of the replacements, they are pretty strict as it is addressing lead service lines. Just lead service lines only really became an issue in Flint because of the corrosive nature of the water service that they had.
They didn't treat the water properly.
Exactly. So, when you remove the buildup of calcium and other minerals within that lead service line through a corrosive water supply, that starts to eat away at the lead is really when you start getting into issues. With a lead service line by its nature, through its use, it builds up that coating and isn't necessarily contributing to a higher lead amount in your water supply. It's just when you have that corrosive nature that causes that to happen. There are additional factors that can play a role in lead in a home as well, more than just a service line. If you have galvanized pipes with deposits in them, that can cause lead to be in your service, in your water supply, if there has been lead deposited in them over a period of time. Fixtures, faucets, for a long period of time, brass and lead was used,
Right.
brass containing lead was used in fixtures. So you can actually get, lead from your fixtures in your home. So it's not always the lead service line that is the culprit of a lead reading, and the lead service line on its own isn't necessarily, a contributor to high lead readings if it's been in service for a long period of time and is in good condition. So there's a lot of things to consider, and that's why the testing is so important, to ensure that, if we do get a hot read, that we get out there and we take care of it immediately. So there's a lot of different factors at play with regards to this. So anyways.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Is that it for you, Derek?
That is it.
Okay, any discussion items that aren't on the agenda that anybody wants to bring up now? Okay, Chairman's report. I have just one thing I'd like to throw out there, and I've talked to Derek about this several times. Back when we signed our contract with Great Lakes Water, one consideration we had as to our costing was the ability of having storage, tank storage, to reduce our peak demands.
Right.
And at one time, and that was a number of years ago, and I think it's time that we revisit that. At one point, I talked to Derek several months ago, and it was thought that we might save up to $600,000 a year if we reduced our peak charges. That's not the whole story, though. Derek reminded me, you got to look into the future as more and more people would go to storage, peak demand would go down. Great Lakes Water would just start adjusting their cost to the fixed cost side of the delivery and less onto the service side. Also, it is a cost. It's going to take maintenance. It would require quite a bit of analysis. But I think it's something that we should look into and at least educate ourselves on, and possibly want to go that direction moving forward. At the time, it was going to be about $1.5 million to construct the tank, but that was a number of years ago. Assuming it's $3 million now, we save $600,000 a year. It's a 5-year payback on the initial investment. I think it's something we ought to look into.
So this topic came up probably about a year ago in our reopener conversations with GLWA. So in our contract, every 5 years or so, GLWA meets with the township and reviews our pressures, our consumption, our total sales, and when our peak consumption takes place. And then they modify our rate structure based upon what they're experiencing as far as our consumption habits. So during that conversation about a year ago, the question came up, well, what happens if we reduce our peak hour consumption? What does that do to our rates? Is it a large change? And before the meeting, I went back through my files, and they did generate a pro forma, a very basic pro forma for us, as far as if we were able to put in storage what it would do to our rate structure based upon certain assumptions. And that's what's in front of you right now. So if you see on this chart, our volume, we purchase about 41,300 million cubic feet of water per year. So that's how they measure how much water we consume. Our max day use is, so on a given year, the maximum amount we normally use is about 2.01 million gallons, right? And then the peak hour consumption that we currently have is about 3.51 million gallons per day. So if we were to put in storage and flatten out the peak amount, which a lot of our rate is factored on, and level it out to the max day amount, they're anticipating at 2.01 million gallons an annual savings of $323,200, or a 27% reduction in the annual cost for the service. You'll see the total based upon 2023 charges are at about 1.191 million. It'd get us down around 867,900. Now, to the vice chairman's point, if you were able to further reduce that, the peak hour amount, you could achieve greater savings up to a certain point, right? So it's not an insignificant number, a 27% reduction at these assumptions, and let's just say your water storage was, a $3 million expense, your ROI on that's, 10 years. So it definitely warrants consideration and review to see whether or not it makes sense. And to the vice chairman's point, a variety of things need to be looked at, like, how long is this going to be the format for which GLWA uses in their pricing? I know that there was a recent change. I was part of a rate structure analysis group that GLWA had put together with a number of member communities, and I know there were some adjustments to the rate structure that could have potentially altered some of these savings possibilities. So we would need to take a look at that. Potential maintenance costs associated with a water tower or water storage facility, what kind of capacity we would need, and whether that capacity would, a larger capacity warrant the additional expense, because the savings could be more significant if we could level these out. You have to take a look at the hydraulics of the system and whether or not we could, achieve these with a reasonable storage amount. So there's a lot of different things that would have to be looked at. Also potential locations maybe, and that might be down the road a little bit, but water storage, it's going to be a fairly large facility, whether a water tower or a on the ground, a tank. So those are all things we would have to look at. But the dollar figures, they seems to make sense that, or at least it could make sense. So.
Well, then the other aspect too that would have to be done, Derek, is there going to be any reduction to the homeowner, the taxpayer? Because yes, you want to recover your investment, but at the same token, we're going to have to go out on a bond in order to do all of this investment, right? It's the tank, it's the improvement of the infrastructure, it's the maintenance and everything else like that. Taxpayers are going to say, okay, well, all that's good, but is there going to be any reflection in any kind of reduction to us as a taxpayer?
Absolutely. I think the only reason you do this is to save the Grozeal water payer, money on their bill. That's the only reason to do this. Right. We don't have pressure issues where you need a tank because the pressure fluctuates and you need that elevation to provide adequate pressure. Nothing like that exists. This is solely and 100% about saving the homeowners money on their water bill.
Right. It just, yeah.
We have a unique situation here on Grozeal. We are fed by two separate water treatment plants. And the north end of the island, that main comes from spring wells. And the one down here at Grozeal Parkway comes from the Allen Park treatment plant. And throughout the years, I went to many seminars put on by the American Water Works Association, and quite a few of them were about water tanks. And a lot of the people got up there and they were talking about the maintenance and all the other headaches they had with these, with the altimeter valves and all that other stuff. And I remember distinctly that one guy from Waterford Township, he says, if you don't need a water tower, don't get one. It's the biggest pain in the neck that you'll ever have. And we used to have 3 of them here on Grosse Ile. We used to have one here in the Navy base. We used to have one on Macomb Street. And we had one up at the toll bridge. City of Detroit told us, you don't need those. We'll supply you with enough water. And that's when we only had the Bridge Road main coming across. Now that we got 2 of them, we got more water than we're ever going to need here on Grosse Ile.
Well, Les, I can certainly agree with that. I'm just saying, I think it's something we need to look into. This is strictly, we don't need it to provide the water. That's true. If it can be a cost savings, I think we ought to look into it.
Absolutely.
I
Now,
mean, there's enough of these around. I mean, a lot of people have them. I mean, it shouldn't be difficult to get costing information on what it's costing to maintain them, to keep them up, and to
Well, do you
utilize them.
remember Trenton's water tower?
Pardon me?
You remember Trenton's water tower?
No.
Trenton had a huge water tower right next to the West Road Viaduct. I mean, huge. The cost of maintenance on that and doing the inside of it and doing the outside of it, when they discussed that with the city of Detroit, out came the torch. Gone.
How long ago was that?
10, 15 years ago, maybe 20. That got taken down before we had the 24-inch main coming across.
Well, I mean, those are duly noted concerns, and I think they should be investigated. I think all concerns should be investigated.
yeah, absolutely. So maybe we do this, just because to do all that math is a ton of work. If we just do a fat pencil and say, our savings is $300,000 or $400,000 divided by a number of houses, what does that yield, and is it worth us pursuing for that? And it may be $50, it may be $500. I don't know what that number is today, but that'd be a good starting point to understand what's the level of urgency behind it. Because all that being said, we're looking at maybe 8 to 14 years before those savings are recognized. Not saying to take and defer from doing it for that reason, but based on what we have, we can probably do some hypothetical math and see what that net may be. Because my simple math at 300,000 divided by 4,000 homes, it's $75 a year. I don't know if that's a number or not, but I'd like to see what that math is.
Then you gotta share the $3,000 cost to implement with 4,000 homes.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So I don't know what all that math is, but it'd be nice to see a very, very high level, couple of hours to assemble it, business plan that says, is this worth it, is this worth doing or not?
Maybe
No.
we have the engineer do it.
And of course,
Just do a fat pencil on it.
and the other thing, we would be bonding it, and we would not want it to increase their costs
Correct.
over a period of time. I mean, we would definitely want it to show immediately the bonding would cover the installation cost, and as it was paid off, there would be an immediate savings, and that savings could
Yeah.
continue.
Most residents don't water their grass in July and August for the reason for the water prices. Is that gonna help them afford to be able to take and actually water the lawn or not? What is that number? Right?
How are the contracts with the Great Lakes Water Authority? Is that something that is done on a annual basis, on multi-year basis? Is there any service agreement contracts at all with them?
Yeah, usually they're long-term. They're like 20-year contracts.
Are
usually.
they?
Yeah.
Okay.
With like,
I thought it was 30.
that might be 30, it's
Yeah, I think
20,
it
it's a
was 30.
long-term.
It was a big one.
But there's reopener clauses every 5 years or something like that, but.
Okay.
And that will never expire. GLWA's priority is to always have current contracts. about 7, 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, they went to what they called the model contract, which was like a default agreement across all their customers. Before that, they had individual different contracts through all the different communities. So, and they've indicated that their goal is to never have that again. It's always going to be the same contract moving forward, so.
But it's on the trap line. That's what we're here for,
Yeah. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Let's see what we have.
I have nothing further. Let's go around the table.
Nothing for me.
Nothing? Ray?
Meridian Road, how are we doing on the bridge on Meridian Road, Derek?
The word I'm hearing is it should be by the end of the calendar year, but, that is subject to weather conditions and, materials and whatnot, but, it has been pretty decent weather, and it looks like the forecast is still pretty good as well. For the most part, all the approaches right up to the bridge are, with the exception of probably a couple 100 feet back, is all done. They are going to do, I believe, the immediate approaches in concrete, so that still has to take place. But it looks like everything's on track, so.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Yep.
I have nothing else.
Lenny?
Merry Christmas, God bless everybody, and look forward to seeing you next year.
Les?
Same thing what Lenny just said. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and God bless all of you.
Okay, if nobody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Okay, everybody in favor, get up and leave.